Hi folks, we're going to take a look at this question here, number 17 from page 245. So they want us to find the exact value of this trig ratio. So first of all, I notice that this angle is slightly above pi, so I expect this to be in the third quadrant. So right off the bat, I know that the answer should be negative. All right, we're going to take a look at a couple of ways to attack this problem. So first of all, you can take the more direct way, which would be to try to write this as a sum or difference of two special angles. Okay, and we notice here, we've seen this before, the denominator 12 and 3, 4, and 6 are all factors of 12. So a good trick to use when doing this is try to split up this numerator into a sum or a difference. In this case here, I think I'll probably use a sum. But when you break up 13, break it up into values that can reduce with 12. So for example, I wouldn't break this up as 11 pi plus 2 pi, because 11 pi over 12 is not a special angle. Okay, so here, I could break it up as 10 and 3, that would probably work. I could break it up as 7 and, not 7 and 6, that's not going to be too useful, but 9 and 4, that might be a good one. So let's try 9 and 4. So let's write 13 pi over 12 as 9 pi over 12 plus 4 pi over 12. Okay, and I realize that these are both special angles because this is just going to be divide both by 3. So we've got 3 pi over 4, and this divide both by 4, so this is just pi over 3. And I'm able to write this angle as the sum of two special angles. Okay, so I can go ahead and solve the problem. So here cos of 13 pi over 12 can be written as cosine of 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 3. And now I can use my addition formula for cosine to expand this so that it involves only the individual angles. All right, so the formula for this would be cos of 3 pi over 4, okay, times cos of the second, which is pi over 3, minus, remember cosine always the opposite operation, so sine of the first, 3 pi over 4, times sine of the second, pi over 3. Okay, and I always like to have my little diagram on the side to help me out here. So, this is my pi over 3 is going to be my 1, 2, root 3 triangle, and 3 pi over 4 is going to be in the second quadrant, and that's my 1, 1, root 2 triangle. But of course, my x value is actually negative 1. Okay, and now I can just read my answers off these little diagrams. So cos of 3 pi over 4 is just going to be x over r, so negative 1 over root 2. Okay, cos of pi over 3 is just going to be 1/2. Okay, and then here minus, and sine of 3 pi over 4, well, it's just y over r, so 1 over root 2. And then sine of pi over 3 is again y over r, so root 3 over 2. And now let's bring this all together. So we already have a common denominator of 2 root 2, so we have negative 1 minus root 3 over 2 root 2. Okay, and we can see this is clearly a negative number, so just as a quick check that it makes sense. All right, and if you like, you can rationalize the denominator, but I'm fine you leaving your answer like this. Okay, so again, to recap, break this up as a sum or difference of two special angles, and a way to do this is when you're breaking up the numerator of 13 pi, try to break it up so that you're using two numbers that are both going to reduce with 12, like 9 and 4 or 10 and 3. Okay, now there is another way of doing this, which is a little less direct, okay, but it does maybe mean not having to work with a fraction of pi that's greater than 1. So the other option is to use some related angle identities. So here, let's take a look. 13 pi over 12. Well, if I go 12 pi over 12, that brings me to pi, okay? So 12 pi over 12. So 13 pi over 12 is just going to be an extra little pi over 12. So the related acute angle is going to be pi over 12. So I can relate it to this angle in the first quadrant of pi over 12. And hey, what do I know? I know the cosine of this angle in the third quadrant is going to be the negative of the cosine of the angle in the first quadrant. So I could rewrite cos of 13 pi over 12 as cosine of pi plus pi over 12. Okay, and this is just going to be equal to the negative cosine of pi over 12. Okay, now I still have to kind of do what I did before. Here I suspect it's going to be a subtraction of two special angles. So this is another option that you have, is to find this connection between an angle, okay, which 13 pi over 12, and its related acute angle pi over 12. I personally probably would go with this one here, but that works perfectly well. Okay, that's it for this one.